What's good? What's good? What's good, beautiful people? It's your main man, Big G, coming at you all the way live. I'm in your space, I'm in your face, and I'm definitely blessed to be here on this wonderful day. It is June 9th, 2026, here in the great state of Mississippi. We are live at 5 here on the Prime Time Network. I am your host, Big G. I am your host, ladies and gentlemen, Big G. I had to reiterate that. I had to make sure you knew who that is. Me, host, Big G. And I'm definitely blessed to be here on this wonderful day. Welcome to Industry Talk. We're going to give everybody an opportunity to lock in, chime in. All the notifications go out before we get started because we have a great show today. A little different. Normally on Tuesdays, we lock in with Paul Whitehouse, my good man Paul, and we talk about business, finance, Patriot, BFC. But today we have a special edition. Today we have a conversation that needs to be had. We have a conversation. Turn this down. I got to turn down all my audios and everything. I got so many widgets and gadgets up in here. And we're not going to hold you long in terms of me talking. Because like I tell you guys all the time, I got a face for radio. But I'm making sure that everything here is locked in. All right? So today, we're still going to lock in with mental health, leadership, service, and community impact. So welcome to another edition of Industry Talk. I am Big G, and tonight we're bringing a powerful conversation centered around leadership, service, wellness, and creating meaningful impact in the lives of others. As we continue to recognize the importance of mental health and personal growth, we're honored to be joined by two remarkable women who understands what it means to lead with purpose. Miss Emily Mitchell has dedicated her career to helping individuals and families navigate life's challenges through advocacy, support, and mental health awareness. Her message reminds us that while we may not get the opportunity to start over, we always have the opportunity to reset and elevate. Joining her is Miss Kiara Smith, a respected corporate leader who has spent more than 20 years creating strategic experiences and initiatives that connect people, strengthen organizations, and uplift communities. Through her leadership at FlowServe Corporation and the FlowServe Cares program, she has helped open doors for youth, champion STEM education, and support causes that leave a lasting impact far beyond the workplace. Tonight's conversation is about more than careers and accomplishments. It's about balancing leadership and family, serving others while maintaining personal wellness, and understanding that true success is measured not only by what we achieve, but by the lives we touch along the way. Whether you're a business professional, community leader, parent, entrepreneur, or someone simply looking for inspiration, tonight's discussion will offer valuable insights on resilience, purpose, mental wellness, and the responsibility we all share to make our community stronger. So lock us in, tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend, and get ready for an engaging conversation with Miss Emily Mitchell and Miss Kiara Smith. This is Industry Talk, ladies and gentlemen, and the conversation starts right now. Right now. So let me bring to the stage Miss Emily Mitchell and Miss Kiara Smith. How are you guys doing today?
Doing good. How are you?
Fantastic, fantastic. It is good to see you. And like I said, today it is your stage, Miss Mitchell. Miss Smith, it is your today. Just today. Let's get some stuff. Let's get some straightenings before we get started.
You just said I was strategic. In a few months, it'll be our show.
Oh, ain't that something? Now, everybody on here knows Jonathan's show. We had this conversation, Kirby Capone, everybody that normally taps in with us. I said that I feel like Caesar right now. E Brute. I'm, as soon as I turn my back, knife in to the left.
Ooh.
But it's okay.
We got that takeover spirit.
No, it's all for good reason and for good purpose, because you guys have some great conversation and some great things that you're going to bring to the table. As a matter of fact, bringing communities together. I got my water bottle here, so I'm gonna sit here and I say it's water up in here. I'm just I don't. It's nice and chill. These thermoses work. I don't know if y'all see that, but these thermoses work. You get what I'm saying? And I appreciate that. But y'all know I'm a simple person. Y'all, Emily, Key, Auntie Key, y'all know me. I'm simple. This goddamn thing got a kung fu grip on it. You got to go through this to get to that. Push this button. I'm not Fred Sample. Where did y'all make this design? In China somewhere? This is not American made. This can't be American made. We not that smart. You got to be a nuclear physicist to get into the canister.
Hey. That's Stanislaus education.
Hey. Now you're hitting below the belt. You know what I'm saying? I ain't said nothing about Bay High. I ain't said, and OLA not over there saying nothing in regards to supporting, you know what I mean? Yeah, hey, man. That's all right. Mom, I appreciate you for getting me the education that you did. I would not let your sister. Oh, I'm not supposed to tell you we're related. Damn. I would not let your Miss Kiara Smith talk about the education that you provided for us. But are y'all ready to get this thing rolling?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so I'm going to sit there and disappear, and I'm going to sit back and lock into the conversation. If y'all need me at any point in time, let me know.
Okay.
Definitely let me know. But before we flow and before we go, I have to let you know that, where's it at? I think it's right here. Yes. This episode is being brought to you by Miss Emily Mitchell.
Thank you for tuning in to Industry Talk. Today's conversation is being brought to you by Mrs. Emily Mitchell. As we continue to grow, learn, and navigate life's challenges, remember this powerful reminder. We don't get to start over, but we do get to reset and elevate. No matter where you are in your journey, every day presents a new opportunity to adjust your mindset, refocus your purpose, and rise to the next level. Thank you, Mrs. Emily Mitchell, for encouraging us all to reset, elevate, and keep moving forward.
All right.
It's the Auntie and Emily show. Auntie and Emily.
Oh, all right.
So I want to hear from you. I want to hear from your experience, and I think you have something that you want to share.
Yeah. So today, before we get into other topics, I wanted to talk about mental health and my mental health journey, along with my daughter. I got her permission to speak on this subject and to share this with you before I did this. But I just want you to listen to something. I'd like to read something for a moment, and then we'll go into more detail. This was written March 9th of 2014. Take a deep breath. Now visualize yourself in a therapist's office. As the therapist begins to speak, you begin analyzing every word she says. Depression. You immediately think of the commercials set in black and gray with people walking around with clouds over their heads. Don't let depression ruin your life, says the unseen man as the commercial plays. I'm telling myself, stop. You have to listen to what she's saying. Have you ever had suicidal thoughts? She asks, and your brain begins to soar. Yes, all the time. In fact, you think to yourself, but should I answer or should I lie? You choose not to lie. And in that moment, everything around you becomes surreal. You turn to see your mother crying and looking at you as if she never knew you at all. A woman handing you a pamphlet of places you can go to get help with your so-called depression. And in that moment, you accept your fate. You're crazy, and there's nothing you can do about it. Before this appointment, I didn't know one thing about depression. All I knew was that I hated every part of myself, and I didn't know why. I knew that some days I wished I wasn't alive. I also knew sometimes I wanted to do something about it. And before I was sent to Millwood Hospital 2 years ago, I was traumatized by my internal feelings. As the commercial was over, in slow motion, a man finished checking his boxes and looked at my mom and said, "I think we should admit her." Once those words were spoken, the next 30 minutes went by in almost an instant. I would take straight razors and slide them across my wrist because they made me feel as if I was punishing myself for being such a horrible person. The pain was almost soothing in a way that it could never compare to the internal anguish I felt inside. I was sent to Millwood Hospital for evaluation. The sit in the waiting room felt almost endless. I looked at the TV showing the top 40 best music videos of all time, with no sound, of course. The hospital itself was playing light piano music to soothe the soul, I suppose, but it was making me anxious. I looked around at all the others in the waiting room, wondering what they were there for. Then I looked over at my mother, her puffy eyes glued to her phone, as if whatever she was looking at was the most important thing in the world, though I knew that wasn't the case. I knew she didn't know what to say in this situation, and I couldn't say anything to make it better. The waiting was almost unbearable. Then it was finally our turn. The evaluation began, and it was like pouring alcohol into an open wound. The same questions over and over again. Before each answer, I would look up at my mother's face, only to see this look in her eyes that I'd never seen before. Maybe it was guilt, anger, or even disgust. It was hard to tell, trying to answer his questions and look at my mother's face. Once those words were spoken, the next 30 minutes went by in an instant. The paperwork was signed. My brother brought my clothes. I said my goodbyes, and I was walking down a corridor to the unknown. Little did I know I was on my way to the best thing that could have ever happened to me. I spent 7 days in Millwood Hospital, and it opened my eyes. I expressed my feelings in a place where I felt unjudged and important. As I listened to others speak, I heard my own inner thoughts come out of them, and I realized I wasn't alone. I even ran into a familiar face. A girl that I had known since junior high school was there for the same reason I was. Seeing her made me realize that so many of us suffer in silence, and no one would ever know. The very epitome of depression is the feeling of being alone in darkness. And yet sitting in this hospital with these strangers gave me a reason to live, a reason to show people that we can overcome a hardship and stand here today fighting for the future that we want to have. As long as I live, I will never regret going to Millwood Hospital. It made me strong enough to say that I am here loving myself with a million reasons to live. That was my daughter's college essay that she submitted for her, to get into school. And I read that because it really was the first time that, or her situation was the first time that I had truly opened my eyes to mental health and what was happening in my own home without me knowing. Now, I'll show you these pictures. It's very graphic. But this is the harm that my daughter did to herself. Imagine as a mom seeing that for the first time, and people ask me, how didn't you see it before? Why didn't you know? Well, she wore hoodies every day, long sleeve clothes. She was in her room all the time. That's a teenager. You don't think about what else is going on. You worry about the drinking, and you worry about maybe she's doing, some drugs when I'm not looking, or staying out too late. But never in a million years could you have told me that my daughter was cutting into her body because she hated herself that much. So that's where I grew. That day at Millwood Hospital, she was right. She wrote my feelings exactly how I felt them. Exactly. I didn't know what to feel. I didn't know what to think, and I didn't know what to do. But what I will tell you is that the first thing I thought about was, what are people going to say? What are other people in this family going to say if they know this is happening to my child? Are they going to blame it on my lifestyle? Are they going to blame it on the fact that, she comes from divorced parents? What would people say about this? And would they blame me? So I picked up the phone and I called who I always called in crisis. I called my niece. And the words that changed everything for me was, it's not about you. She said, Auntie, it's not about you. And those words resonated with me. And I realized, this is your child. She is hurting and she is asking for your help. And she may not have been able to do that by herself, but she's doing it now with the help of someone else. And if you want her to be around, you better listen. And that's what I did.
Good for you, Auntie. I mean, that story, while I'm familiar with it, this still brings back so many rushing feelings that I remember the letter, but I don't remember it so intensely. And I think that some of while you were talking, I wrote down some of the things that triggered for me, right? You talked about the perspective of a caregiver, right? Not always recognizing the signs or the symptoms. Like you said, we're in a house together. How could I not see the things that she was doing to herself to harm, not necessarily to kill herself, but to harm and relieve what it is that she was feeling. And that's a true sign and symptom that a lot of teenagers and adults go through, where it's not necessarily the need to kill yourself, but it's a release. It's a release of the pain that she was feeling inside. And then it talked about really in a raw sense, it talked about Caitlin's, personal experience, seeing a commercial and knowing that those things that they displayed on the commercial, they resonated with her. And that's what you want, with recognizing mental health. You want something to resonate so much to where you want to seek help. And though she wasn't able to come to her parents and talk about it, she was still able to figure out some type of way to release the pain. You also talked about whether or not, Caitlin talked about telling the truth or telling a lie.
Mhm.
And, you know, people do struggle with that. And teenagers do struggle with that because the end game is you do run the possibility of having to go into, you know, a mental health facility to get the support that you need because of the seriousness of you wanting to harm yourself or someone else. And then you talked about the shame and the guilt, both on both perspectives. You know, you talked about Caitlin's shame and guilt of it all. Then you talking about your own shame and guilt. What will my family say? How would I look to other people? Because I know they're gonna be asking, "Where's Caitlin?" And what do I say? You know.
Mhm.
And so the other thing is Caitlin in her letter or in her essay talked about having to say goodbye to family members. You know, walking down that corridor and having to be away from family members, those that she loved, those that she know is her support, but those individuals are not able to help her right now in this particular crisis. And I think that was very poignant for me to hear that. And I hope that resonates with other people. And then last but not least, what I really heard Caitlin say, because it's a stigma, right? She talked about the positivity of getting the support and getting the help. So many people have a stigma or they create a narrative in their head about what it looks like to go to an inpatient hospital. And not everybody's experience is a negative experience. Like you go to, you know, a mental health hospital to get the help that you need. And I love to hear her say, like in the essay, she saw somebody that was familiar to her. And that means I'm not in this by myself. Everybody, there are other people who are experiencing what I experience.
Yeah.
So I applaud you, Auntie. You know, I know we have these conversations every morning. We do a therapy session just about every morning. But at the same time, I love the fact that we're able to normalize the conversation. Do you feel like because of this particular experience, do you feel like the conversation about mental health is normalized in your household and within your family?
Oh, absolutely, I do. And you know, even if you listen to one of the lines in the essay, she says you're crazy and there's nothing you can do about it. That shows you how far we were away from mental health and, you know, what it meant and how to address it. You know, she thought she was crazy. And if I'm being completely honest, that's where my mind went. You know, surely when we arrive here at this place, she'll snap out of this, you know. And I had to learn. I had to go through my own come to Jesus with myself and start researching and start understanding, you know, what makes someone, because you think I give her everything she needs, most of what she wants. And what is it that's missing? What is it that made her hate herself? But later you find out that, you know, kids struggle with their bodies. You know, her friend group was primarily Caucasian. So she compared her body type to her friends, you know, being well endowed, you know, big breasts, big build, big. Those things bothered her, you know, and seeing her friends able to wear the things that she couldn't. Just, you know, not being able to talk about her feelings about, you know, the friends that she met. Just, she was different. She had a different friend group. She was afraid to talk about those things, afraid to share who her friends were, afraid of being called weird. But she says in there, I hated everything about myself, you know, and I thought, why? You're beautiful, you're smart, I couldn't understand it. But it wasn't for me to initially understand. Caitlin had to get the help to work through where she needed to be and where she is now. Those scars, as horrific as they are, you know, they are now covered with beautiful tattoos where she called them her blossoms, her blooms. their flowers and daisies, all the happy things that came from her learning about her mental health. And she brought that awareness home. She brought the subject home. We talked more often. We discussed it more often. And I realized in my conversation with her that it was very similar to me coming out to my mom and telling her, you know, this lifestyle this is not my lifestyle.
Yeah.
You know, this is not who I am, and I want to share with you who I really am. And it resonated with me that she said those very same things. What did I do wrong? Who is gonna blame me? You know, the guilt, the what are people gonna say? You know, but then years later saying, this is the happiest you've ever been. I'm proud of you. You know, to hear those words. And that was what I told Caitlin. I'm proud of you. You're leaving to go to college. And by the time she left for college, she was in a different mental headspace. And it was because she continued her therapy and her group therapy. And for a while, she wanted to, dive into social work because she felt so much of what she'd been through she could bring to the forefront.
So do you think that as a result of Caitlin sharing her experience, do you feel like your family has been able to be healed? And now that you're sharing her story, do you feel like, do you feel as though the heavy place that you guys were in, do you feel like you have healed?
I feel like we're healing because I still feel that, her story and her journey helped me with my own, and depression can be triggered in many ways, grief and loss and sometimes change and, finances, those things happen. And for me, it was a struggle. I'm not formally educated. So going into the corporate world brought a lot for me. I was brought into a world where, number one, I was the only African American for a long time in the executive realm at my job. And so that was very hard. You come home with hearing the slurs from the good old boy system, the negatives, the things, they talk about you. And where do you go?
Right.
Where do you go? Who do you talk to? You take that all home, you suck it up, you turn around, you do it the next day. And at the time, you don't realize all what you're putting onto yourself.
Yeah.
Because as Black women, we think we need to do it all. Because we do it all. We do it all. But we don't ever stop and take time for self-care. Right. We weren't taught that though. We weren't taught that because I don't think our parents could afford to take the time off to do self-care. I mean, they had fun and they had moments, but I mean, really to dive into themselves and say, I'm going to take care of me today because we had mouths to feed and houses to take care of. So for me, her journey helped me to recognize that there was some mental health that I needed to address in my own life.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
Not,
So it brought up some things that were dormant for you that you hadn't even addressed for your own self. But because you talked about your experience of working in corporate, what do most Black women do? We suck it up, like you said, we deal with it and we keep moving. It's kind of like the functional depression, we're walking through life, with unresolved issues or concerns for ourselves, but we suck it up, we push it to the side and we take care of everybody else until that one day, the rubber hits the road and it all explodes,
Yeah.
And you talked a little bit about like the intersection of struggles versus mental health concerns. And while they do intersect, it's when those struggles go unresolved for such a significant amount of time is when it turns into a mental health challenge or even a mental health crisis.
Absolutely.
It turns into a mental health crisis, and that's when we have to be vulnerable enough. Even though you may not have the words to say all of how you're feeling, just the fact that you're coming to someone, right? You're coming to someone to say, I need help. And I really and truly don't know how to say what it is or what type of help that I need, but I'm here. I'm here. And the other thing is, oftentimes when we go to mental health professionals, even to like an inpatient hospital, we even think that they're gonna feel some type of way about us, but that's their everyday, that's our everyday work. Our work is not to judge you. Our work is to help and heal you. Even my husband said a couple of times, I just want my therapist to fix me. It's not my job. My job is not to fix you. My job is to give you the tools that you need in order to heal yourself. I'm going to help you. I'm going to hold your hand. I'm going to hold your heart. I'm going to listen to the words that are coming out of your mouth, but I'm here to assist you in your healing process.
Yeah. I wanted a fix. I wanted a quick fix. The first initial quick fix was medication. And I still believe it helps with the anxiety and, but I thought this pill will make me feel better. And that's all I need. I can work through the rest myself. I've been taking care of myself all these years. I can be okay. Even with the knowledge of what my daughter had been through, my self-denial would shine through periodically. I can be okay. I just need something to help me get through. And I realized that pill wouldn't fix me. So getting the help that I needed from a therapist, and that was a journey in itself. I was ready to quit. I went through a therapist. I looked for the right one. I thought she was, and then I was, she's not fixing me. So let me interview the next one and let me talk to the next one. And I wound up back in my original with my original therapist because she said that to me. I can't fix you. You have to be willing to share with me what's going on inside of you. And I can help you walk through this journey. And we will talk about the things that affect you. We will talk about the things that make you feel your lowest, but we will also talk about the good times and the happy times and the things that make you feel better. And with that approach, I became comfortable. And now it's a conversation. When I get on that Zoom call, we talk. The first few minutes might be about hairstyles. It might be about, what we did over the weekend. And then we segue into, what's on my mind. And sometimes it doesn't always look like a conversation that's heavy with that cloud over your head. Sometimes it's a conversation of all these great things happened this weekend and I got to do all these things. And I get to share that in a safe space. A space that, like Caitlin said, where I'm not judged, where I feel empowered and important. And it in turn helped me in my job. It helped me with my confidence. It helped me to go and grow in my role and become a leader in my company because I had the confidence now to pick my head up and realize that, I am strong because I did the work to get my strength.
I want to come back and deal with the word strong, but I also want to talk about how, so Caitlin talked about how depression showed up for her, but share with others how depression showed up for you.
So the very first time, which I didn't realize it was depression in hindsight, was I was a young mom, unmarried, had a little boy, this little boy, my firstborn. And I remember being in an apartment and I remember thinking he could do better than me.
Mm-hmm.
Look where I am.
Mm-hmm.
I graduated high school. I got a baby that's, a few months old. I don't have any education outside of that. What am I going to offer him? Is this going to be his life? What does he deserve? And in that moment, I was at the point of the brink where I wanted to take my life. But it's crazy because in these moments I had it was weird for me. I had these, thoughts and out of body almost feeling, and I didn't know what was happening to me then. I just knew that I felt really, really bad.
Yeah.
And I felt like that's not the life that I wanted for myself, and he deserves better.
Yeah.
But when I looked at him, it was just, everything changed. I looked in his eyes and he was looking at me as if he knew what I was feeling. And whatever was in his eyes, I said to myself, there's nobody in this world for him better than me. Mm-hmm. But I didn't know that was depression. Mm-hmm. It was very selfish of me to feel that way. I felt very selfish. I'll say that. I felt very selfish. But I didn't realize that was something that, that I could talk to somebody about. Because who was I going to tell, oh, I don't want to be here anymore? Mm-hmm. I didn't want to be called crazy or, whatever other terms came with that, mm-hmm. And then down the line, as I got older and moved on and moved away, my wife and my kids said, you're angry all the time. Mm-hmm. You're frustrated all the time. You yell for everything. You snap. You need help. What's wrong? Mm-hmm. My wife said, if you don't get help, we're in a divorce. We're headed to divorce because you look like you're disgusted all the time. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize it. It was normal for me. Mm-hmm. I'm pissed at the people at work for ignoring me. Yeah. Ignoring what I could do. I knew I had to work twice as hard, not only because of the color of my skin, but because I didn't have the education, mm-hmm. And I was down for it. But you get slapped enough. Yeah. You start believing, you start believing that this is absolutely. Mm-hmm. And so I took that home. I took it home and it started to manifest itself in other ways. Yeah. It was eating and staying in the bed with the, lights off and every chance I get wanting to sleep, and I was like, I have to do something about this. I have to do something. And it wasn't that very first time that I did anything about it. Mm-hmm. It was several incidents that led me to a medicine and then therapy. It took a while because as much as I had felt like I'd helped my daughter, surely this isn't happening to me.
That's it. Yep. Mm-hmm. That ego get in the way.
Can I interject something right quick?
Absolutely.
We can't hear you, Big G.
You can't hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, that's cool. I'm only here for 1 second. Just a quick intermission because Kiara was talking about support and community, and you guys went into some other things, but and she was talking about the weekend and things. It was a general conversation, but since she mentioned that, let me put this out there right quick.
Good stuff. So that was from this weekend.
Today's conversation on Industry Talk is being brought to you by our platinum sponsor, Tisha's Signature House Blend Season All. When you're preparing yourself something to eat, be sure to season your meats with Tisha's Signature House Blend Season All. And I'm out.
He was just saying he's out. He did a commercial, Auntie. You can't hear me? Okay. You might need to go out and come back in.
I'm back.
Yeah.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the conversation is getting thick, it's getting heavy, it's getting real.
Yeah.
And people are intently listening. You have a full chat, you have folks in the feed, you have folks on Instagram, Twitch,
Good.
IG, YouTube. Okay. And Miss Kiara Smith is back. Can you hear now?
I can hear.
Yeah, I was just running some commercials. Yeah.
I can see you.
Okay, good deal. And like I said, once again, I'm out.
So we're specifically talking about depression and signs and symptoms of how they manifest themselves in different people. So just to put some education out there too, is that I would like to educate our audience today with signs and symptoms of depression. So these are some of the baseline things that if you see in yourself or in others, approaching that individual is really important. You may not have all of the answers, but you can put them in contact with someone who is able to get them the support that they need. So you talked about feeling sad. It can show itself by feeling tired all the time, sleeping too much, not sleeping at all, some insomnia, crying all the time, or suppressing your feelings to where you don't cry and you show up very stoic, right? You lose interest in eating or overeating. There are signs of trouble paying attention. You're not able to focus. People it sounds like want, where people are talking to you. You can't even focus in on what they're saying, and you have to ask them repeatedly. Repeat that, or can you repeat that again? Or can you say that again? Because I didn't get it. Feelings of nervousness and cranky. You talked about that and how you were taking it out on your loved ones who loved you. They didn't deserve it, but at the same time, you didn't know how to channel what you were feeling. People talking about suicide, dying by suicide, talking about wanting to kill themselves, and just noticing that people aren't acting the way that they would normally act, right? And some of the things that we hear from family members is, she just being dramatic. She lazy. Pray more, And what we do know is that you don't have to choose between therapy and faith. You get to do both of them at the same time, Absolutely. And everybody goes through that. We hear those things. And so when you hear those things, it makes you turn inward. It makes you turn inward. And so did you hear some of those things when you were experiencing, or have you ever repeated some of those things with, your own family members or your own children or your wife?
Yeah. I do more damage to myself. I'd say it to myself, I just have to pray harder. Yeah. I just have to pray more. I need to do something different. I just need to suck it up and, or figure out what it is and put it to the side. It shouldn't affect your life. But you did hear from other people, oh, it's going to be all right. Just pray about it and turn it over. And you do that. You try, you attempt to do that. But you made a good point. One of the things that one of the scriptures that I would say to myself all the time was, when you go through deep waters, I will be with you. you know, and that's Isaiah 43:2. You know, I said that all the time to myself because I knew I had to do the work.
Yeah.
But I also knew that I needed God in order for me to do the work. I needed him to be there as well, to guide me, to be a part of my journey. I knew that it couldn't be just medicine, a therapist, without, you know, the third string.
So I think that it's really important for the Black community to understand that you don't have to choose. You don't have to choose between your faith and mental health and getting the support that you need. Because guess what? Just like God gave pastors divine, you know, support, or, you know, knowing how to preach and knowing how to talk to people from a faith perspective. They gave doctors the ability to be able to help and heal people. They gave teachers the ability to be able to educate our youth. He also gave therapists, people in the mental health field, the opportunities and the skills to be able to help heal other people. Yeah. So I just, you know, I hope that that resonates with someone out there, because we tend to create the narrative that I'm going to be judged. You're not going to be judged. We're actually happy and excited, you know, that you come to us to seek the support. We're going to help you find the words. We're going to help you channel some of those feelings that you're experiencing, but we're also just going to be there to listen to.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You know, I also want to just bring up the point that mental health or depression, but mainly mental health, it doesn't discriminate. Not at all. Yes, we're talking about it from our perspective as women. We're Black. We're talking about our children, you know, from that perspective, but it does not discriminate against age, culture, you know, gender, all of those things. It just doesn't. It doesn't discriminate at all. And it's a lot of our family experiences, you know, how we talk about mental health and how we're able to seek mental health is going to be whether or not we are willing to really get the help and the support that we need. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about your experience. You talked about what it looks like coming from you know, your corporate world, and some of the things that you struggled with at your job. Let's talk a little bit about that. Bring up some of the things that you experienced.
Yeah, you know, like I said before, a lot of it was, you know, rhetoric about, you know, African Americans, or just the racial slurs that you hear. You know, some of it was being pit against each other. You know, she's got this role, but here's somebody, blonde hair, blue eyes, that can do this role, and you're fighting against that. You're fighting against I was fighting against the education barrier, but also worked harder. You know, it always felt like I was working harder or being worked harder, you know, and we hear it all the time, you know, now it's starting to be talked about how Black women go into, you know, are stronger. They're stronger. So they're treated different in hospitals and at doctors' offices. And that happens in the workplace as well. You know, she can handle it. She can do it. You know, there's nothing wrong with her, you know, but counterparts, different races, you know, I need a mental health day. You know, and they're given that, and they're not looked or frowned upon. Whereas I asked for a mental health day, now I'm the angry Black woman, you know, because today you got on my nerves. You know, it had nothing to do with anything except for you did something, you know, passive aggressive, or you know, insulted me in some way indirectly, or you just simply got on my nerves that day and I had to put you in your place. Now I'm angry.
Right.
You know, And so you leave with that. You take that home. You take it home, and you beat yourself up about how you can be different,
Yeah.
how you can change, how you can be seen differently, you know? And it took a lot of conversations, even just with us, for me to realize that I could show up and be myself. I could show up and be who I am. I could speak, you know, I spoke my mouth anywhere else. Say what I have to say. You know, there's a way to say things.
Correct.
You know, I could be nasty too, you know, nice, nasty.
Yeah.
So, you know, but I found a way to do it. I found a way to be able to get my points across without coming. But the work I put into that, I realized nobody else was doing. You know, they would say whatever they wanted to say, you know, and here I am at home, you know, cringing about what tomorrow's going to look like because I spoke my mind today.
Yep.
You know, and so, you know, then the fear of losing your job, the fear of supporting your family, all those things come in, and they're just, like you said, they compile one after another until you literally feel like you're gonna explode. And I think that's where the term crazy comes in, because you feel crazy. You feel like, I don't know what to do next. I don't, you know, any little thing is going to set me off.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a horrible feeling, because you do take it out on the people who are the closest to you. You know, you take it out, and honestly and truthfully, a lot of times, you know, Caitlin would say, Mom, you know, take a breath, and think about what we learned back when I was going through this. You know, take a moment and just realize where you are. You know, accept it. Be okay with it. Be okay with where you are, so that you can now take the next step to getting help. Because if you don't admit to yourself you need that help, then you're not going to seek that help.
Yeah, and you're going to stay festering in it. And that's a really good point too, because some people choose not to get the help and the support and choose not to be vulnerable. They allow their ego to take over. And then that's when we have outlets where there's drinking, promiscuity. We turn to drugs. We, you know, are overly angry, or we're wanting to hurt ourselves or harm other people. You know, those are some of the outlets that people choose, as opposed to look at the other side of this. Look at the other side and look at the fact that not only am I helping myself by being the role model and being that strong woman, but I can also help others who are looking up to me. And I love the fact that Caitlin was able to check you.
Yeah, she was. She was, and she did. She always said, you know, she said, I hear you compare yourself to grandma all the time. You always say, but my mama was strong, but my mama did this. And she said, and she did all those things. But were the same resources available to her that are available to you now, you know? And even if they were and she didn't choose them, it doesn't make you weak. You're strong in the fact that, you know, you follow her footsteps in other ways. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to be a strong woman because you seek help. You know, and or that you feel in a place of helplessness. You know, it still doesn't make you weak. And realizing the trauma, because, you know, people talk about trauma, and some people categorize it in, you know, it has to be physical, or, you know, or sexual trauma, or those things. But trauma can be loss, you know, losing someone. And the very first time, you know, I went through my anger was the loss of who I call my Nanan. You know, she was really not, but she was my godmother. She was, you know, for all intents and purposes. And when she left, when she passed away, for me, I didn't know what to do with those feelings.
Mhm.
I didn't know how to express to anybody how I felt about that, and that was the first incident where I was struggling so bad and where I got angry and just got, beside myself, and then
Yeah.
add the corporate stuff to it and then the explosion,
Yeah.
And like I said, even having have already been through this with my daughter, this
Yeah.
challenging situation, I thought, you would think that I would have known to recognize those signs within myself, but I didn't. But I ached physically, my body ached, headache all the time, body ached all the time. Some of the things you said, very incoherent, not able to pay attention, not able to hear what somebody was saying, even though I was listening, losing focus very easily. And eventually it did begin to affect my job. It spilled over into my job and just my interactions with other people. I've always been pegged as being mean, and I was, but later on I realized that it was my own pain surfacing,
Yeah. Yeah.
my own pain.
I would really like for us to deal with that strong phenomenon and how it's so easily attached to Black women, and we want to live up to this standard of being strong. And the first thing that I want to say to you and to the audience, let's replace that word from being strong to being vulnerable. It's okay for you to be vulnerable. It's okay for your children to see you cry. It's okay for you to say to your children, I just don't have it right now to be able to give you what you need. I can ask, I can find other ways to get you the support that you need, but mama just don't have it right now. I really need to take a break. Like Caitlin told you, I need to take a beat. I need to go in my room, separate myself for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then I'll come back and then I can be everything that you need. I think that for our ancestors, they had to be strong. And when you understand it from that perspective, showing vulnerability got you whooped. It got you sent to another plantation. You went and worked in the field and things of that nature. And then fast forward to civil rights era. We were fighting for equality and fighting up against being discriminated against and things of that nature. So we had to be strong. And history tells us, Rosa Parks and Coretta Scott King and all of these different individuals who are the epitome of being strong. Yes, they were strong, but I bet you they had some vulnerable moments about themselves. I bet you they did. And if they were here today, they will be able to talk about the chronic exhaustion. They will be able to talk about the irritability and feeling angry and the emotional numbness and the disconnection and the disassociation and the imposter syndrome. That's another thing that I would like to introduce to our conversation too, because sometimes we do live in an imposter, like we show up in not our true selves, but we're trying to push through, but we're showing up as somebody else, when really and truly I walk out the house, I put this mask on, and I show up ready and willing to be the answer and be the be all at work, when really and truly, if you get me behind these closed doors, I am a wreck and I am a mess.
Yeah. A lot of, oh, sorry.
Yes, indeed. Before y'all go into your next talking points, we do have a couple of questions that I want to. Can y'all hear me? No? Hold on a second. Hold tight.
Can you hear me, Emily?
Okay, how about now? Can y'all hear me? Can y'all hear me now? Yeah. Can you hear me, Key? Okay, yeah. So we're going to allow them to go out and come back in. We do have some questions um, from the audience.
Can you hear me, brother?
Yes, I can. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, good deal. Good deal. Like I said, we want to give everybody an opportunity to have you guys field their questions.
Okay.
Auntie Bernadine said she could hear all of us. We just couldn't hear each other in the studio.
We can hear you.
So the audience could hear us, but we just couldn't hear each other. So we'll give Kiara an opportunity to come back in. Key, you back in? Can you hear us?
Man, yes. Yes.
Okay, good deal. Good deal. We just had some questions from the audience. So we wanted to make sure that we get those in and give everybody an opportunity to join the conversation.
Okay.
This one is from Ricky Ross.
Mm-hmm.
My good friend Ricky out in California, for Ricky Ross. Whether through mental health advocacy or community outreach programs, what do you believe is the single most important investment we can make in the next generation as it relates to mental health and advocacy?
Mm-hmm. I don't think it's one investment in particular. I think that it's a complex effort and outreach, right? I think that we need to hear it from the pulpit. We need to hear it from pastors being vulnerable. We need to hear it from their wives about their vulnerability. I think we need to hear it from the role models in our lives, whether it's our parents, whether it's our aunties, whether it's our uncles, our sisters, our brothers. I think that we need to hear it from them. I think that more mental health professionals need to look like me and you, and you, brother. I think that I would like to see more people that look like myself that are getting the education that they need in order to help individuals like ourselves, you know. I think that investing in normalizing the conversations in our everyday talk. We can talk about our hair, we can talk about working out, we can talk about going shopping, you know, we can talk about those things all day long, the latest song, you know, the latest trends. But how often are we talking about mental health? You know what I'm saying? Like, it could just be a conversation of, how are you doing today? How can I insert myself with you today? Me and Auntie talk about this all the time. How's your heart today? How's your heart today? And
expressing. Yeah. Teaching your kids to express from a young age, teaching young men that it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to show your feelings. It's okay for you to kiss your dad. It's okay for you to, you know, feel that way. Teach them to express so that they can say, you know, this is how I'm feeling. I don't necessarily understand it. But, you know, time is a huge investment, and that's going to go a long way. You know, we do that through FlowServe Cares. We put a lot of time in with young kids, you know, in different areas, at-risk youth, community, and, you know, even disabled kids, physically disabled kids. You know, we work with them through a mental health program that our engineers design toys for them to be able to express. You know, children who don't verbally speak, or, you know, might not necessarily be able to move their hands and legs, but they can participate in sports and other from with their abilities, you know, whether it's toys that work when you blink the eye, and then you can know what's going on inside of their minds. Those same things can work for younger children, or children, you know, that don't necessarily have disabilities, physical or otherwise.
Okay.
From the mental health, because I do work in the hospital, right? Having the knowledge to know, like, mental health education is really important too. And so when children come to the hospital, we as social workers get a consult and we go to the room and we help normalize that what you're feeling is okay. No one's blaming you for feeling the way that you feel. And we have to have those heart-to-heart conversations with parents. And they show up like you did, Auntie. Well, what did I do wrong? You ain't do nothing wrong. You know, maybe there is some accountability, maybe, but we could eventually get to you. But right now it's about your kid. Something else that you said, like sports and stuff like that. Coaches taking out the time to talk to their players about mental health. You know, put the ball up for a second and talk about mental health. You know, those are some ways that we can invest in, you know, helping normalize the conversations about mental health. Good question.
Okay.
Good question.
And so we also have many people struggle silently with stress, anxiety, burnout, or self-doubt. What advice would you give someone who feels overwhelmed but is afraid to ask for help?
Well, I would say isolation is what most people turn to. It's easy. It's easy to turn to isolation, shut down, sleep, drink, whatever it is. I think that number one, hopefully a family member is able to recognize the fact that you are struggling and you're not acting your normal self, and you would be open to being truthful. You're open to being honest about what you're feeling. You may not always have the words, but you saying, you're right. I am acting this particular way. And
there's anonymous ways as well. You can call a hotline and you can speak to somebody first and go through that initial chat, you know, that talk. And then that may help guide you to the next step, or give you the courage to get to the next step by doing it anonymously first, you know, without.
And for the school age kids, going to your counselor, talking to your friends. There's a lot of education amongst teens nowadays where they know how to maybe secretly go and talk to a counselor because they overheard their friend, or they heard a conversation about, you know, someone wanted to hurt themselves, or they're feeling sad, or they're having a conflict at home. You know, those are some ways to seek help and support when you feel isolated, when you feel alone and you don't want to talk.
Or afraid,
or afraid.
Okay, so big shout out to Holly Marie, Leo Hawkins Jr., Bernadine Labat, King Misi, Freeway Ricky Ross, Mr. Mitchell, Chanel Tapper. So, hey, baby, how you doing? You know, I had to throw that in there to my baby. Terry 57885. Miss Danya, how you doing, Danya? Terry Allred, North Carolina in the building. Freeway Ricky Ross in the building. The West Coast is in the building. Holiday 1993 is in the building. Zumba, Tamra, what's going on, cuz? How you doing? Tolu is in the building. You guys have a packed house today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for tuning in, locking in. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, drop them in the correct space and place, and we will make sure we pass on the message. But let me once again get out of the way so that we can continue this awesome conversation. Yes, indeed.
So I think. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I think one of the things that we always say, you know, often is to find your people, find your circle, find that group, and that group may be one person, it may be two, you know, it may be three, maybe five, but I don't think there's that many people out there that have, you know, a larger group than maybe five, but you have that core group of people who support you. And I don't mean just people who tell you what you want to hear.
Yep.
Yes, people. I think people who truly can relate to you, whether it's relate from as being a mother, relate as being someone who works in, a corporate environment, somebody that, has gone through what you've gone through or feels like they're in that right now. So many of the conversations, like Emily said, we have around so many other things. But when you find that core group, you'll be surprised how many of those women in your circle, as the guy said on the last one, are going through exactly what you're going through or have been through. And you get a different perspective because the journey may not be the same. The way they came to be, the outlook on it may not be the same. And sometimes, because we've gone to therapy or because we are a therapist, we sometimes think we have the answer. And then you hear somebody else who's not licensed or who and they say something and you say, wow, it makes sense. That makes sense. I didn't think of that. We do that all the time. Sometimes, you have to be reminded. And just because you're in this role doesn't make you above it all. Right. You still struggle. Yeah. I still struggle. It's continuous because things continue to happen. Life continues to happen. Absolutely. And other things come into play, and then you talk about it. Talk about it. We are so shut down in the Black community about such things. We don't talk. For whatever reason, and I know it's a learned behavior. Yeah. You hear it. We just didn't talk about those things back then. And I get it, but we're not back then anymore. Yeah. Talk about it. Yeah. Make it okay for you to be able to tell your child's story like I just did. I called my daughter and I said, can I tell you a story? Can I tell our story? And her answer was absolutely. Absolutely, because somebody out there will hear this story, and I hope it will touch a few people, and it will from a parent's perspective or from a child's perspective, and so talking is going to be the best way we can get this out there. There's programs and resources all over, and ways you can tap into it, whether you have insurance or not. There are ways to seek help. And again, call that 1-800. You can call it as many nights as you need to call it, as many days or mornings, 24/7, until you get enough, strength to make the next step. Yeah. And that's where your strength is going to begin, when you start finding a way to heal from the inside.
And, we've created, it's called the Suicide Hotline, but it's for any type of support that you need. But 988, calling 988, just like you call 911 or 211 or 311 for information, you can call 988 and you can be as anonymous as you want to. But they have the skills to work with individuals who are working through their crisis. They are able to put you in contact with therapists that's in your area. They can expose you to different coping skills. On our jobs, we have EAP, the Employee Assistance Program. You're able to call, identify whatever support that you're needing, depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, whatever it is that, bipolar, whatever it is that you need support with, family conflict, marriage issues. You tell them what it is that you need support with, tell them what zip codes you want. You can be as specific as, I want a Black person, I want an Asian person, I want a Hispanic person, I want them 10 miles from my zip code. And then they will be able to email you or mail you a list of therapists that's in your particular area. You mentioned that there are all types of resources that are available. We Google, we chat GPT, any other online platform, we can get the support that we need. We Google everything else. You can Google how to get the support that you need. And there are low-cost clinics. There are low-cost clinics where you can get support, where they may give you a scholarship, they may get you at a different rate that you could pay. And a part of social work's code of ethics is allowing yourself to offer support without expecting financial return.
And a lot of our kids, we've taught them to, you don't make fun of disabled children. We teach them differences. That's another thing that we need to discuss with our children. Teach them what mental health may look like, so that they can say, well, somebody I know, they have these symptoms, or they know that if you hear such and such has had a mental breakdown or is going through a mental crisis, that they know that that's something serious, that it's not crazy, and that this person is just needing help. And I think when you say normalize, those are all the things that will normalize what mental health looks like. It should be a common household topic. It shouldn't be something that we point our fingers at and that we laugh at, or that we allow, because we don't know. There are mental health crises in small kids, any age. And so if our children don't understand what that is, we're back to when they saw crippled or disabled children and they pointed and they laughed. We have to get past that. We have to educate them and teach them what that looks like, so that they feel comfortable saying, hey, mom or grandma or uncle, I'm struggling and I don't know what to do about it. I don't know.
When I enter a patient's room at the hospital, social work and the hospital industry has realized the importance of normalizing the conversation. And I tell my parents when I walk into the room, not only are we here to check on the patient, but we want to know how you're doing. When you have to give over the control of taking care of your child's needs every single day, and now I have to rely on this nurse, I got to rely on this doctor, I got to rely on this specialist, but how are you doing? How are you doing? Because it can be really scary sitting in this hospital, seeing your kid dealing with whatever. I had a conversation today before coming to get ready for the live. She was diagnosed with diabetes. And I told her, let's have the conversation about mental health. And guess what that mama told me? She said, we talk about mental health every day. I said, can we clone you? I said, I am so happy to hear you say y'all pause every day after school and you check in with your family. She said her husband still struggles with wanting to talk about mental health, but she plants the seed every single day with her kid and with her husband and with herself, and they talk about mental health. Those are the things that we need to do every day, all day, talking about mental health. When I go to the gym, sometimes we talk after we do a little huddle, not intentionally, but we talk about mental health. You and I talk every day. If it's not before work or if it's not during the middle of the day, but we gonna get our mental health conversation in. Even with our sister, me and Galen's sister, we talk with Holly. We talk about it all the time. Our mental health. She'll say, I'm feeling cuckoo today, but I also know what she means when she says, I'm off today. I don't feel. And then I'll ask her, well, how can I help you? How can I show up? Yes, I'm states away, but I can still show up for you.
One of the things that, to make it easy, it's mental health, but just say, how's your heart? How are you feeling? And actually listen, how are you feeling today? And listen to what that person said.
That's it.
And because in so in between the lines sometimes is where it lies. Is sometimes what they're trying to tell you, but they don't know how. So, we don't walk up and say, well, do you want to talk about mental health today? Or let's talk about mental health. And you can if you have that type of relationship, but it depends on the person. How does your heart feel today? And what are you thinking up here? How's your mind? How was your day? Tell me a little bit about it. It was all right. Well, what happened? And that starts a mental health conversation. Yeah, because somebody says she's actually interested in listening to what I said. It could be a coworker. It could be somebody at your job. We do it all the time. What are you thinking about today? You're quiet today. Are you okay? And it feels good. Not everybody that asks you that question, you want to dive into your whole mental health. But if that's somebody that cares about you, it's okay to say, I'm not good today. I'm not okay today. We say it to each other all the time. I'm not okay today. I'm not okay today. What does that look like? And for me, one of the biggest things was it didn't look like what I thought it gonna look like. That was my thing. Mental health, this journey, and Emily would always say, Auntie, you may get what you want, you may get to where you're going, but it might not look like what you think it looks like at the end of it. But I'm a control freak. So yes, in my mind it does. It will, because I know me. Well, I learned so much about me through my mental health journey that it's been crazy. Things that I thought I'd suppressed, things that I thought I was over, things that I thought had long since, passed, was still very much here, and things would happen that would make it resurface, and learning the coping skills and learning, the exercises that my therapist gave me or the things that we talk about helped me to identify, here's that thing that you didn't address all those years ago. Now it's here. Now it's facing you head on. What are you going to do about it? How are you going to move through it? And it feels like you can't, and it feels very heavy, and it feels very weighted. And sometimes it's embarrassing. Sometimes you feel like it's so embarrassing because who else could have gone through this? But you just be surprised, how when you come out on the other side, how there is truly a light at the end of the tunnel.
There really is. There really is. I think that seeking support, it's not a sign of weakness, but it's a sign of courage, and we just, go back to the question that was asked, showing sign, you have to have the courage to just open up and say, I'm not okay. I'm just not, and even if you do it with somebody that you wouldn't normally talk to, you'll be surprised, like you said, how they are willing to say, I'm not okay either. I'm not okay either. We want to go get an iced coffee, or you want to go take a break for a minute, or let's go take a walk. We do that at work too, where we just go and take a walk around the hospital, go outside. Those things sound weird. They sound extremely simple, but we make things harder than it has to be, but at the end of the day, it really is that simple, It really is that simple.
You're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Nope.
No.
I can't, but that's okay.
Yeah, Emily, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so just convey the message to Keith, all right? Because everybody else can hear me.
Okay.
From Bernadine Labat, hey Auntie, sometimes just to hear from one of my 8 siblings calms me and takes away my stress. Just to hear from a sibling. Michelle Tillison saying great information. What's going on, Auntie? How you doing, darling? And of course, Bernadine, and I'm trying to wait for Kiara to get back in. Okay.
I'm back.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
I can hear you. We're good.
Yeah. Key's back?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, good. All right. And Bernadine's also saying this is important information.
Yeah.
Very important information. I just want to give you guys all of the, you know, I'll also say this. If you're not my friend on Facebook or any of these platforms, you may be tuned in, right? But I can't see your comments if you're making them.
Okay.
All right. So I don't know if you guys are seeing the comments on your screens, but just so that you know, I can't read your comments because we may not necessarily be friends, and it's not popping up on my screen. So while we're at this brief intermission, make sure you share the live. This is a great conversation, great talking points. Everything that's being stated and talked about, you need to hear. Baseline. Sad, oversleeping, undersleeping, insomnia, not eating, lack of focus, nervousness, crankiness. Those are things that I guess people normalize as they go through their lives, correct? They don't take it as something, to be as serious as you may
What
think.
it could be.
Right, until it's too late.
Yeah.
Right. So I have to thank both of you for giving us the baseline of things to recognize, not only in ourselves, but also in other people.
That's it.
To stay vigilant and focused. So thank you for everybody that's joining the live. I'm about to get out of here once again so you guys can continue this conversation. But I did have to let the people know that they're making comments. And once again, I'm out.
All right. Auntie, what would you, as we, wrap up, what would you can't hear me? Okay, hold on.
Well, y'all can hear me until they get back. There's no sense of me sitting here with all these bright lights on. I sit there in the dark and I'm listening to the conversation just like everybody else. Yes, indeed.
Can you hear me?
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
Indeed.
Okay.
We're good?
Yeah.
Good.
Good. Awesome. And I'm out. Oh, my bad. I forgot to take myself out of the studio. I just turned off the
You're funny.
Yes.
Okay, Auntie, what would you like to say from a caregiver's perspective to someone who's out there? Number one, who's afraid to have the conversation with their kids, who's someone who is hesitant about them having to face their child's reality. Like, what would you say to some parting words that you would like to say to mothers, fathers, children?
I would say, read up on what the signs could look like. Read up on what your child may be displaying. Don't just take for granted that, she wears hoodies all the time. So, there's nothing wrong. Or she stays in her room he stays in the room with the door closed all the time. Or they answer with one-word answers and doesn't elaborate. Retreats away, doesn't want to go to, be around family, doesn't want to engage in any way, eats alone, or, is showing you in other ways, acting out. We always said that, Caitlin was dramatic. That's what we called it. You're dramatic. You're overthinking it. You know, what are you doing this for? But, you know, in reality, those were cries of help. There were cries for help, you know, the letters that she'd write or the notes that she would write, or not wanting to be home, you know. I tease her all the time because she went through, you know, what I call the goth stage. And I always told her, you know, Black people weren't goth, you know. And my wife is who said, you know, you have to let her express who she is. And so that's another thing. Let your kids express. It doesn't look like what it looked like when we were kids. It's never going to look, but you can best believe the generation before us said the exact same thing. You know, it doesn't look like what it looked like when they were growing up. So things might not be familiar or may be different, but they may be different. That may be a reason. It also may just be expression, but allow some expression. I don't mean, you know, just your kids talking back, but I mean, give them the opportunity. You know, that's one of the things that I had to learn with these kids that are around now. My nieces, nephews, great, you know, from you know, allowing your child to express. I thought that was absolutely ridiculous, you know, for a child to be able to say how they feel. But then you realize that if you give that child the opportunity to say how they feel, they will also come to you and express when something doesn't feel right. You know, you can give them a way to express themselves in a better way. Well, here's an outlet. Why don't you write? Here's an outlet. Why don't you listen to some music? Spend some time by yourself. You know, it's okay to go away for a few minutes and take a beat. You know, to this day, Caitlin says her coping skills from her time at Millwood and through her therapy, you know, keeps her grounded. She knows she becomes overstimulated in certain situations. And she says, I'm overstimulated. I need to walk away and regather myself. And she does. She takes that moment for herself. And now it's common, you know. So I say to parents, pay attention. Pay attention to the little things. Pay attention. You know, we don't always know what's going on in our kids' lives. We don't always know what they go through at school or who's hurt them deeply, or if we've hurt them with some of the words that we say. You know, we say. Yeah, those things can be traumatic to our kids. You know, we think they're funny. We think they're, you know, because that's what we've been taught. You know, to make fun of, to tease, and sometimes it's gently, and sometimes it's aggressive, you know, and we have to learn that those words stick with those kids. Yeah. And so pay attention to not only what they're doing, but also to what we are saying to them, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Any other parting words that you feel like is important for parents? Or just as a Black woman, any parting words that you would like to speak from that perspective?
I'd say if you have gone through this, or you're in that process of a journey, you know, stick with it, continue on, continue to talk, continue to educate, continue to share, you know, make conversations about your feelings and your you know, where your mind is at, a normal conversation at dinner with a girlfriend or with your spouse, or, you know, I would say that we do go through a lot as Black women. We take on the family, you know, even if we are not the only provider in the household, we do take on a lot of what our family, we're very much protectors of our family. And that extends not only to just your spouse and your kids, but a lot of times Black women are responsible for nieces and nephews and parents that are aging. And all of that can play a part of your mental health. You know, don't be afraid to say, I'm caring for my sick or dying parent and I can't take time for myself. Absolutely you can, because if you don't, you can't be there to follow through. So I say, you know, take time for self-care,
Yeah.
whether it's your morning regimen for your face, whether it's you just sitting in a room quietly alone, whether it's a spa day or a nail day, journaling, do something for you outside of what you do for your family and your
Yeah.
spouse and your kids. Find a way, to release, to
Yeah.
find that free time, that free space, because it makes a difference overall in your thinking and how you show up at work and just how you show up every day,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would like to tag on, it's okay to be challenged too.
Hmm.
It's okay to be challenged by your loved ones. Like Ndini said, she feels good after talking to her sisters, but how often do those sisters also challenge you to change some of the behaviors that they see that you're going through, or how you're treating your kids, or how it's affecting your kids? Because, like you said, they had a bad day, or they had to show up, and now it's manifesting itself in coming out as aggressive and irritable and angry and things of that nature. But it's okay to be challenged and being open to that conversation of being checked,
Yeah.
yourself. So
Yeah, because when it's coming from a loving place.
You do.
You know your family, you know your friends, you know the people you surround you with. And if they're telling you this, it's because they see it. It's not to hurt you, it's not to, embarrass you.
That's it.
It's just to let you know that here's what I see. And if you want to talk about it, I'm here. Or if there's something bothering you, I'm here. Know your safe space. Know your safe space, because that's very important, and women who have friends who go to other friends, know that when they come to you, it's a safe space. It's not for gossip. It's not for Facebook. It's not for Instagram. It's a conversation that somebody has built up the strength to bring to you. And so if they're bringing it to you, they need help. And it's not for you to turn around and share with other people. It's for you to listen. Sometimes, I think Ricky said it in the last segment, just listen. Just listen. Sometimes that's all somebody needs. It's just for you to listen. Yep.
And like you said, not have the answer, but just to listen. Yeah, I agree with that. I totally agree with that. Well, I think that concludes our conversation. If I were to have any parting words, it would be my tagline that I always say, we don't get a chance to start over, but we do get a chance to reset and elevate. So I thank you for inserting hope. Yes, you and your family, had a hard place, a very dark place that you had to come from, but look at the hope. Look at look at how you guys were able to flourish and come out of that. And then also realizing that wasn't just a stopping point for your healing, but it's something that continually happens every single day. And every time you reach a milestone, every time you go through something, you're human. So we're going to continuously experience struggles, and we're going to always continue to, want our well-being to be better. So
absolutely.
I thank you. I thank you for allowing your story to be told. I thank Caitlin for allowing her story to be told. There's other perspectives. Your wife, DeAndre, you talked about him and the fact that, you didn't share that, he went through school and now he's married, and has a beautiful wife and a beautiful marriage. And that's an evolving moment, and how you were able to see your child where you wanted to die by suicide, but you saw that he needed you. And in this moment, you were able to be there and walk your son down the aisle. So it may sound corny, and it may sound, oh, she just making it sound so beautiful and all this kind of stuff, but there is hope.
Yeah, life is beautiful.
There is hope.
Seeing your daughter come full circle and being able to help you, and seeing how she went off to college and flourished, she's alive. And even though, like you said in the beginning, cutting she didn't intend to kill herself, but can you imagine, you know, had she cut the wrong place, you know, and finding your child? It, you know, that's something I don't even like to think about, but you, as a parent, you have to stop and think about what repercussions your children face every day. It's a different world. It's a different world for
really
them than it was for us. Just like it, and so this world brings on so many things that we are so unaware of because you know it's not of our generation. But there are things out there pulling our children into depression, pulling them down. So thank you for having me, Galen, Big G.
Yes.
Thank you, Emily, for all your help every day. Thank everybody online for listening to the story. And, you know, just Galen said it was a full house. I'm glad it was a full house. I'm glad I got to tell our story from my lips, and hopefully it touches and helps somebody else along the way, you know, in the process. So thanks, everybody.
Yes. Thank you, brother. We love you and appreciate everything you do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks for letting us steal your show. It'll be Emily, Auntie and Emily coming soon.
What's good, beautiful people? It's your main man, Big G. And this is my personal invite to all of you to join me on Industry Talk on the Prime Time Network daily at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time, where I get into great conversations with entrepreneurs, artists, industry leaders, you name it, we bring it to the table. So make sure you tap in with us, lock us in, tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend. We stream on all major platforms. And be sure to visit us at gemsitpublishing.com. This is Industry Talk. Let's get into it.
Motion.